On this episode of Canadian Football League Weekly, we discuss the Week 7 games played north of the border, where the Hamilton Tiger Cats got their first win of the season, and the Edmonton Elks did not. Welcome to Canadian Football League Weekly, presented by the World of Football. Each week, we recap the games played north of the border in the CFL, and we look ahead to next week's games. I'm your host, Randy Snow, and I'm joined by my son, Adam.
Hey, how you doing? We were both so busy this past weekend. I don't know how much CFL you got to actually watch, because you were actually at the Arena Football League's championship game in New Jersey.
Yep.
I was out camping all weekend, but I was able to sneak away, get out my cell phone, and watch the tail end of one of these games this weekend. But still, very excited to talk about everything else I caught up with.
Yeah, I watched the last half of the Saturday night CFL game, and I watched last night's CFL game, the Sunday night game. So, but the first two games I did not see at all. I was on the road, so missed them completely. But yeah, ready to talk some CFL.
Yeah, thank goodness for those great highlight packages that the CFL YouTube page puts together. If you guys are new to this, watching the CFL, we recommend, hey, go check out their highlight packages. 10 to 12 minutes often, sometimes less than 12 minutes of just, you get the flow of the game. It's like one of the more perfect highlight packages you're going to get out there. We highly recommend it.
Yeah. Yep, they do a great job, and without them, we wouldn't have a show to do. So let's talk about the Week 7 scores. Starting on Friday night, it was the Ottawa Red Blacks over the Edmonton Elks 20-14. Ottawa led 15-9 at halftime. The defenses dominated in this game. Neither quarterback threw a touchdown pass in this game. Ottawa quarterback Drew Brown completed 22 of 33 passes for 257 yards, no touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. Running back Raquel Armstead ran for 53 yards and a touchdown, while wide receiver Justin Hardy led the receivers with 5 catches for 61 yards. Kicker Lewis Ward made 4 field goals. The longest was 48 yards. On defense, linebacker DeAndre Lamont had 9 tackles and an interception. For Edmonton, quarterback McLeod Bethel Thompson completed 27 of 39 passes for 206 yards, no touchdowns, and an interception. Wide receiver Eugene Lewis had 7 catches for 74 yards. Kicker Boris Beatty made 4 of 7 field goals, the longest from 42 yards. Yeah, there was a lot of wind in this game, and a lot of these field goals were going left to right. I think mainly to the right. But yeah, the wind was really playing havoc with the field goal kickers in this game.
Yeah, and I was just surprised, how close this game was even. Edmonton, obviously, with the head coaching change in the middle, at the end of last week, and they had the shortest turnaround of everybody last week. They played Sunday. Here they are playing Friday. So I was very curious how the Elks would come out and play. Obviously, they still played a close game. It was a very defensive game, as you mentioned. But again, coming up short. So there's still a lot to be fixed there in Edmonton. And I feel bad for them because I thought they were so close. And now, I don't know, with interim head coach, but maybe give them another week with the team.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if they play next week or if they have the bye. I guess they will play next week. So we'll see if they can get things put together, going forward. So I'd like to see Elks, do something. I mean, I feel so bad because they're definitely not as bad as that record.
Yeah, that's 2 losses in 5 days to the same team. Ottawa and Edmonton played back-to-back, home and away. So I feel really bad for Edmonton. Hopefully they can get the ship righted here pretty soon because they've got a good team.
All right. Also on Friday night, saw the Saskatchewan Roughriders defeat the Winnipeg Blue Bombers 19-9. It was all field goals in the first half as the score was tied up 6-6 going into halftime. Winnipeg kicker Sergio Castillo came up short on a 61-yard field goal late in the second quarter. The only touchdown of this game came in the third quarter as Saskatchewan quarterback Shea Patterson connected with Clint Rakovich for his first ever CFL touchdown. Patterson completed 17 of 25 passes for 261 yards and a touchdown. He also ran for 35 yards. Running back A.J. Olette ran for 88 yards, while running back Clint Rakovich had 1 reception for 15 yards and that lone touchdown of the game. Wide receiver Aju Aju had 4 catches for 110 yards, while kicker Brett Lothar made 4 field goals. For the defense, linebacker Jameer Thurman had 6 tackles, a fumble recovery, and a tackle on special teams. For Winnipeg, quarterback Zach Collaros completed 20 of 36 passes for 266 yards, while running back Brady Oliveira ran for 49 yards, while also leading all receivers in this game with 9 catches for 80 yards. Kicker Sergio Castillo made 3 field goals, the longest of which was from 56 yards. On defense, cornerback Evan Holm had 8 tackles. Yeah, I mean, a tough one for Winnipeg, but I do have to say, Saskatchewan, I wasn't sure about those alternate uniforms when they first kind of unveiled them, but I think I kind of like them.
They were different. I wasn't sure why. I hadn't seen these alternate uniforms before. I didn't know if there was a special reason they were wearing them this week or what. I couldn't find anything that I saw online, but they were interesting. They were nice for a change up.
Other than to make an interesting uniform, I mean, the Rough Riders got a bunch of great options in terms of uniforms. I like their uniform. They're home away. Then they have those alternate ones with the circular S logo, which I dig quite a bit, like the old retro one. Now they got this one, a more modern, like sleek down, dark version. I dig it. I think it's a good look for them. Worked out, and they got the W in it, so I'm sure they'll keep bringing these ones back. But you got to feel bad also for Winnipeg a little bit. Zach Collaros, he only had, the 2 touchdowns he threw last week, I want to say. And those are the only touchdowns all season he's thrown, while Winnipeg now going back in the loss column after 2 straight wins.
Yeah. I thought we might see a real surge from Winnipeg, but 2 wins and now they're back on the losing streak. We'll see what they do next week.
Yeah, and for Saskatchewan, I think they're proving that, hey, they're going to be one of the tough teams to compete with this year, even with a backup quarterback leading the way while they wait for the starter to come back. So, kudos to them, and very curious to see how the rest of their season goes.
All right, moving on to the Saturday game. It was the Hamilton Tiger Cats defeating the Toronto Argonauts 27-24. This was the first win of the season for Hamilton. Cornerback Destin Talbert returned a fumble 31 yards for a touchdown in the second quarter, and Hamilton led 17-7 at halftime. The Tiger Cats also led 27-10 at the end of the third quarter, but Toronto fought their way back in the fourth. Starting quarterback Cameron Dukes was replaced by backup quarterback Nick Arbuckle. Arbuckle threw an 18-yard touchdown pass to Devarius Daniels, and Janarian Grant returned a punt 96 yards for a score, his third in 3 games. But it was not enough as Hamilton hung on for the win. Hamilton quarterback Bo Levi Mitchell completed 20 of 29 passes for 270 yards and a touchdown. Running back James Butler ran for 50 yards and a touchdown, and wide receiver Tim White led the receiving corps with 5 catches for 66 yards. On defense, linebacker Kyle Wilson had 8 tackles and a fumble recovery. For Toronto, quarterbacks Cameron Dukes and Nick Arbuckle combined to complete 28 of 42 passes for 298 yards and a touchdown. Running back Kadeem Carey had 66 yards rushing and a touchdown, while wide receiver DeMonte Coxey had 5 catches for 87 yards. Now, at first, when I was watching this game, I wasn't sure why Cameron Dukes was taken out. I didn't know if he got hurt or what, but I think they just decided, it's time for a change. We're trying to win this game. Toronto and Hamilton is a real rivalry game, so this is the one game on your schedule that you want to win all the time. And I guess they just figured they needed a boost, and so they put in Nick Arbuckle, and it helped, but it was too little too late, unfortunately, for Toronto.
Yeah, and even with the efforts of kick returner there, why am I blanking on his name all of a sudden? Janarian Grant, who has been stellar all season. They flashed a graphic during the game that he was like number 5 or 6 on like one of the best returners ever, in terms of returning for touchdowns in his career. He's got like 11, I want to say 10 or 11 returns for touchdown in his career. So he's moving up the list. If he gets any more, he's just going to climb up to that second or third spot. He's just 1 or 2 touchdowns away from that. And then the top guy, whose name I forget at the top of my head, had like 30 something returns. That was back in the day. So great list of names he's going to be in the company with at some point. But Toronto just falling short. You hate to see it, but give credit to Hamilton. Get that first win in front of your home crowd. They were playing tough. I caught that. I watched the highlights, but I caught the last bit of the game live. And Hamilton was just they had Toronto in such a spot that they were not going to let that game slip through their fingers. They played them tough. I saw some tough hits. And even though Toronto had a shot there at the end of the game, Hamilton just did everything they needed to secure that victory.
Yeah. Yeah, it was like I said, I've been watching this series for years, and boy, the towns are very close to each other, maybe a 20, 30-minute drive. And one is Hamilton is kind of like Pittsburgh. They're a steel town. They're the working man's town. And then Toronto is your more upscale, the rich folks that live on the hill or whatever. And man, the fans just don't like each other there, and this is always a big game every year.
That's true, because even that game we went to, which was between the Elks and Argos, Argonauts fan just shouting at the end of the game. I don't think there was a Tiger Cat. I did think I saw somebody wearing a Tiger Cats jersey at one point, but
Yeah.
this guy shouted out, "The Tiger Cats suck." There was nobody else around, so that's how that rivalry goes. Which
Yeah.
I usually do that, saying Packers, Vikings, and Bears suck just randomly. I'll do it at the grocery store sometimes, unprompted. So.
Yeah, but they're much nicer up there to their opponents than we are in the States.
Yeah, that's true. We've seen some very nice bickering, not bickering, but some trash talk back and forth. The nicest trash talk I've ever heard.
Yeah.
So then our final game on Sunday saw the Calgary Stampeders defeat the British Columbia Lions 25-24. British Columbia kicker Sean White made his 40th straight field goal in the second quarter and now owns the second longest streak in CFL history. Calgary was up 14-10 at halftime, and the game ended up being tied 17-all at the end of the third quarter. Calgary was awarded a safety in the fourth quarter as a result of a holding penalty in the end zone by British Columbia, making the score 19-17 in favor of the Stampeders. British Columbia trailed 25-23 just before the 3-minute warning when British Columbia quarterback Vernon Adams was intercepted by Calgary cornerback Kobe Williams. That ended the Lions' comeback attempt, and Calgary earned their third win of the season. Calgary quarterback Jake Maier completed 25 of 32 passes for 307 yards and 3 touchdowns, while running back Dedrick Mills ran for 48 yards. Wide receiver Jalen Philpott had 6 catches for 79 yards and a touchdown, while wide receiver Clark Barnes had 3 catches for 63 yards and a touchdown. Wide receiver Reggie Begelton had 7 catches for 52 yards and a touchdown. On defense, linebacker Micah Awe had 6 tackles and added another tackle on special teams. For British Columbia, quarterback Vernon Adams completed 17 of 31 passes for 192 yards and 2 touchdowns with 2 interceptions. Running back William Stanback ran for 64 yards, and wide receiver Justin McInnes had 3 catches for 55 yards and a touchdown. Kicker Sean White kicked 3 field goals during the game, the longest of which came from 52 yards, and extended that consecutive field goal streak to 42 by the end of the game. On defense, cornerback Ronald Kent had 5 tackles and 13 tackles for loss. This was British Columbia's first loss since week 1. They had won 5 in a row before this point. Now, unbelievable. Yeah, you see that stat line, the 5 defensive tackles and the 13 tackles for loss there for Kent.
Right.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
I always get a little confused reading their stat lines because I'm like, is that 18 total tackles, or were some of those tackles for loss? Like, I don't know. I wish they'd clean that up a little bit.
Yeah, I'm going to assume that was 18 tackles altogether. I don't know. They could all be in, all together in one.
Come on, Canada, give us some clarity here. That's confusing. But no, seriously though, the fact that the Stampeders have been kind of back and forth all year, but getting a win against this team when for a minute there it looked like British Columbia, was starting to make their case for being one of the top teams in the league, even with Montreal losing their first game last week. But Vernon Adams has been playing lights out, and he finally kind of got stifled a little bit during this game. So yeah. I see you also jinxed them with your British Columbia shirt you just got.
I just opened the package today, so how could that have jinxed them last night? Of course, it was sitting in the house last night.
It was probably sitting, in transit from Canada, and they're just like, "Oh, take this," and it's going to get some bad juju when it gets to Randy.
Yeah, whatever.
Way to go. But no, look, I mean, a tough one to swallow. A 1-point game though, so we had a couple of games that kind of, very close this weekend. That's the kind of stuff we'd like to see, and the CFL keeps, has been delivering all season long.
Yeah, there was right at the very end of the game, there was actually a fumble by Calgary. So everybody thought that BC was going to get one last chance at it, but the ball bounced around, and the receiver that dropped the ball, I forget who that was right now, but he wound up getting his own fumble back right on the
Mm.
sideline. So they denied BC one last chance to try and throw a Hail Mary or whatever. But yeah, very
Yeah.
very exciting game right down to the end.
Yeah. And then obviously on bye this week, the team we didn't talk about, the Montreal Alouettes.
All right, well, let's look at the standings after 7 weeks in the CFL. In the East Division, it's the Montreal Alouettes at 5-1, the Ottawa Red Blacks at 4-2, Toronto Argonauts at 3-3, and the Hamilton Tiger Cats at 1-5. In the West Division, it's the Saskatchewan Roughriders at 5-1, the BC Lions at 5-2, the Calgary Stampeders at 3-3, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers at 2-5, and the lowly Edmonton Elks at 0-6. Now let's take a look at the matchups for Week 8. We do have a Thursday night game this week. That's going to be Saskatchewan at Montreal. And then on Friday, it's Calgary at Ottawa. Saturday, it's going to be Winnipeg at Toronto. And on Sunday, the Hamilton Tiger Cats at the Edmonton Elks. And therefore, that means that the BC Lions will be on bye next week. All right, here's a news story that I neglected to mention during the game highlights because I thought this was too important to just throw in with the game. But former Calgary Stampeders and British Columbia Lions head coach Wally Buono was inducted into the Stampeders Wall of Fame at halftime of the Sunday night game. He becomes the 50th member of their Wall of Fame. He holds the record for the most wins in franchise history for both of those teams. He was inducted into the Canadian Football Hall of Fame in 2014, and he was also inducted into the BC Lions Wall of Fame last year. Over the course of his career, he won 5 Grey Cup titles, 3 with Calgary and 2 with British Columbia. So yeah, he's got a real connection with both of these teams. I thought it was very appropriate that they inducted him while both teams were there. And then last year, it was the same thing when he went into the BC Lions Wall of Fame. It was a game between Calgary and BC last year. So just a great coach up there. I think he went to 9 Grey Cups altogether, and he wound up winning 5 of them. So just a heck of a career. Nice that he's honored by both of the teams. So 2 walls of fame and Canadian Football Hall of Fame. Doesn't get any better than that.
No, it does not. That's it's a name. As soon as we were going through the script and we talked about that as the news item, I was like, oh, that name I know. It's a name that I've heard for many years following the CFL. It's cool to see, and I like that at least that the teams or whoever puts together the presentations for the Wall of Fame stuff for each organization said, hey, let's set it that week that the Stampeders come to town, or that's the week that the Lions come to town. Let's make that the thing. So at least they had the foresight to do that, and I think that's pretty cool that they did that on both organizations' accounts when he got inducted. So
yeah, and when they were talking to him during the game, he came up in the booth after the induction ceremony. He was saying that it's not all me. I had a bunch of great players, and he had Doug Flutie was his quarterback for a while. Jeff Garcia was his quarterback for a while. Just so many great players that he had. So he was giving them a lot of the credit for his success as a coach, and I thought that was nice too.
yeah, you like to see that so much. I mean, we don't often talk about CFL coaches, especially down here in the States, but that's a name that definitely is going to have to be towards if not at the top of the list, he's got to be in the conversation somewhere up there.
Yeah. All right, well, that's all the time we've got for this week. Remember, folks, some people may love football more than we do, but nobody, and I mean nobody, loves more football than Adam and I sitting here in Kalamazoo. Until next time, I'm Randy Snow.
And tune back in next week to see what shirt Randy curses.
If I get a new one in the mail in time, yeah. We'll see you all next week.